think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
No. I am your father.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
You're listening to After the Ending, the only film podcast where we tell you what happens after the ending of your favorite films. And now, here are your hosts, Mike Spring and Phil Edwards.
Hello, everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to After the Ending. I'm Mike Spring.
And I'm Phil Edwards.
And tonight is our Paul Rudd extravaganza episode, is what I'm sort of unofficially calling it. How's that grab you, Phil?
That works for me. He's the little guy who made it big.
Is that what we call him? The little guy that made it big? Was that how we describe Paul Rudd these days?
Well, we can segue into the fact that Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania opens this weekend.
I get it.
If you're watching this live, so it's a little bit of movie magic, some weird trickery and things like that, which gets us into the whole gist of it.
I like it.
It's a Paul Rudd extravaganza.
Yeah. Well, we figured, like you said, as we're recording this, it is the opening day of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and we love Paul Rudd. So we thought we would do a little Paul Rudd-centric episode, because why not celebrate Paul Rudd? He's fantastic. Love him. So Phil, tell people what that entails then. What are we going to be talking about in this episode?
Yes, we're going to be going after the ending of the 1995 film Clueless, which stars Paul Rudd, where he looked totally different than he does today.
No.
And we will also be doing our top 5 favorite or films or movie roles of Paul Rudd, which do not include the Ant-Man films. We're going to go with some of his other films because he has done quite a few, some serious, lots of them comedy, and a few in between.
Yep. Yeah. Non-Marvel Paul Rudd roles or movies, because otherwise I feel like you could just sort of stack the deck with, the Ant-Man movies and things like Captain America Civil War and stuff like that. So it's the top 5 non-Marvel Paul Rudd movies that we're going to be going into. So
that's it.
Yeah, so that should be fun. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Let's see, Phil, should we start off with just a little bit of talk about Paul Rudd?
We can do. But before that, we'll just say, just before we started recording, there was some camera problems, technical difficulties. So just in case anything happens with with one of us, that's what's going on. But it should all be working normally now.
Here's what we'll say. If one of us just disappears for a minute or two, it's probably because we've traveled to the quantum verse, and we're just briefly visiting, Ant-Man and the Wasp down in the Quantumania world. Not that they were having technical problems with our Wi-Fi.
That makes more sense. Yeah, we can't go divulge much more. It's all
right. Exactly. So yeah, thank you for that's a good disclaimer, Phil. So let's jam on Paul Rudd for a minute. What do you think? What's your take on Paul Rudd? How would you qualify your fan level? High, super high, medium, low?
He's someone I always enjoy watching. It's I know if he's going to be in something, he's going to be good. It's going to be worth a watch because the scenes he's in, he can always turn things around a bit. He can lift weak material and make it work. He's not. I mean, there's lots of different actors. He's not someone where I'm going, oh, I wonder what film he's going to be in next. I don't go seeking out his work, but I know if I'm watching someone, he's in it, or it's going to be pretty good. I always like seeing him as well when he's doing his interviews.
Yeah.
I always, some of my favorites are when he was on Conan O'Brien, and every time he's going to show a clip from his latest film, it was always the same clip from Mac and Me, and he did that year after year after year, and Conan O'Brien would often fall for it again because Paul was such a good actor. He can be totally sincere and sell it and go, no, this time I'm not. Let's roll the clip, and it's
right. Yep.
He's a very talented actor. He's very good at improvising. He's very funny, and as I mentioned briefly, he's timeless in the way he looks. He's aging very gracefully.
Yes.
What about you?
Yes. I would say I'm a pretty big fan of Paul Rudd, actually. I put him pretty high on my list. I may or may not have a slight man crush on him. Not in the same way I have a man crush on like Chris Hemsworth, because like that's a totally different kind of man crush. But like, I don't know, like I love Paul Rudd. I think like and I'm sure I'm not the only person who feels this way. I'm sure everybody does. That's why he's so popular. He's the type of guy I feel like we would be really good friends if we hung out, Like
Oh yeah,
whenever
yeah.
they ask, like, which celebrity would you want to hang out with? I'm like, yeah, Paul Rudd, because he just seems like so much fun and so nice and so down to earth. Like you never get a sense that Paul Rudd is anything but just like a genuinely fun, goofy, nice guy, and I think that translates onto the screen. So I love him in comedic roles. I think he's good in serious roles, but I think he's fantastic. I love him. He's one of my go-to people, celebrities that I am like, yes, Paul Rudd. He's like on my Mount Rushmore of people who are famous that I just think are awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah, you do hear some stories when he's met people, in the real world, and it always comes across as him being a nice guy. He's
Yep.
willing to go along with a few little funny things and whatnot. But yeah, he seems to be one of the genuine good guys.
Right.
Obviously, we don't know for definite, but I like to think that what we do here is all true about him.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that's good.
Exactly.
But if you want to share what you think about Paul Rudd, you can leave comments on Facebook or YouTube when it's broadcasting live, and we'll be able to see it and throw them up onto the screen and answer and comment on them as well.
For
But
sure.
that's our thoughts on Paul Rudd.
I like it. All right. So then that means it is time for us now to get into our after the ending. And we are going through to go after the ending of Clueless. And for those of you, I'm sure most people know this, but just in case you don't, Clueless was Paul Rudd's debut feature film, which I just realized I was wrong on something about Paul Rudd, because I had thought so. His two earliest roles were Clueless and Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, and
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
long time I thought that Halloween actually came out first before Clueless. I really did think that was the case, and I want to say that Halloween actually even has him as introducing Paul Rudd, but I could be wrong on that. But according to IMDb, Clueless was 1995 and Halloween was 1996. So obviously, I was wrong, and Clueless was first. But
Mm.
yes, it is the movie that kind of got him started, got him on the map. So that's what we're going to do, is go after the ending of Clueless, which is also good timing, not only because of Ant-Man and Paul Rudd, but if you watch the Super Bowl, there was a great
Yes.
commercial starring Alicia Silverstone, where she revisited the role of Cher, went back to the high school, and they had all these nice, scenes right out of the movie Clueless that I thought was really well done, and my family enjoyed it. We got a big kick out of it, so I felt like Clueless was definitely a very timely film to go after the ending of tonight.
Indeed, indeed. And I believe there have been TV shows based on Clueless and stage shows, but we're just sticking with the film itself and looking at what happens to the characters after that film finished.
There we go. All right. Well, let's get it. Well, first of all, as always, before we get into the film itself, Phil, how do you feel about Clueless?
I always enjoy it. I came to it late. I don't know why. I never saw it when it came out. I think it might have been like 10 years later, maybe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Maybe not. But I always enjoyed it. It was never one, though, it's not the one where I watch and go, "Oh, that's the most amazing comedy of all time." It's just one where
Right.
I just enjoyed. I enjoyed the sitting there watching it, and whenever it's on, I enjoy watching it as well. But it's not one, like I said before, it's not one I go hunting for when I'm looking for a comedy show. But I know if it is on, I'll sit and watch it because it's got a great cast. It's funny. It riffs a bit on the classic Emma story and things like that. But it's good moments. Alicia Silverstone as well is just so good in it. She's amazing. What about you?
Yeah, I really like it. I did see it when it came out. I actually saw it in theaters when it came out, and I think it's it was a really fun and refreshing comedy at the time. In the mid
Yeah.
'90s, it was a little bit kind of different from some of the other stuff that was coming out. And I think watching it now, it's a really good snapshot of that time, and it does take me
Oh,
back, because the
definitely.
'90s is kind of my era. So
Yeah.
I enjoy revisiting it from time. It's been a while since I've watched it again, but I do know that my wife and my teenage daughter watched it together recently. And that was my daughter's first time, and she really enjoyed it too. So actually, it was good timing, because she saw the Super Bowl commercial and got the
Okay.
joke because she had seen the movie. But yeah, I enjoy it quite a bit. Like I said, great cast, a lot of great recognizable faces in it, and it's just, so yeah, like you said, it's just a fun comedy. It's nothing earth shattering, but it's really enjoyable, and it's fun to throw on when it's on.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because it is very much set in that particular time period, and it's
Yeah.
of that time. But it has aged quite well, and it's.
Yep.
I mean, sometimes maybe that is because it's so anchored into that time. So when you're watching it, it's a nice throwback to that time period.
I think, yeah, I think with a lot of the like comedies from certain time periods, some of them age poorly, and I think the ones that are really classic, when you watch them, instead of going like, "Oh, this seems dated," you watch it and
Yeah,
go, "Oh, this really takes me back," or "This is a really good snapshot of what it was actually like back then. I think the ones that are more authentic or more accurate to their time periods really do sort of take you back, and the ones that come out even though they come out in their own time period, but they're just like not really very timely or very like realistic in how they depict people, feel more dated. You know what I mean? But this one I think really does kind of capture what life was like back then, and that's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, let's get into it then. So here, let's give you the breakdown as always. Clueless from 1995, written and directed by Amy Heckerling, starring Alicia Silverstone, Stacey Dash, Brittany Murphy, Paul Rudd, of course, Donald Faison, and Breckin Meyer. So the story goes, Cher Horowitz, played by Alicia Silverstone, is a stylish but ditzy teenager in Beverly Hills. And she has a rich dad and lives in, a pretty nice big house. She's surrounded by her best friend, Dion, Dion's boyfriend, Murray, and her sort of ex-relative, but not really related, Josh, played by Paul Rudd, who is very socially conscious. When Cher gets a bad grade in high school, she tries to orchestrate a romance between two teachers so that her tough teacher, Mr. Hall, will relax a little bit and let Cher renegotiate her grade. When those two teachers fall in love, Cher realizes that doing good things makes her happy. And so when the school gets a clueless transfer student named Ty, Cher and Dion decide to give her a makeover and help her become popular. At a certain point, Cher gets mugged. Josh comes to help her, and the two start to bond. But then Cher becomes interested in a new student named Christian, and Josh gets jealous. But it turns out Christian is gay. So that's off the table. Ty starts to become more popular than Cher. Cher fails her driving test, and things start to go downhill. But eventually, Cher realizes she's in love with Josh, and they couple up. Cher repairs her friendship with Ty, and the film ends with the two teachers that Cher set up getting married, and Cher and all her friends at the wedding where she catches the bouquet. And that is the breakdown of Clueless. How's that sound, Phil?
It's very good, yeah. And there's obviously lots of comedy involved in that, mainly from the different characters. And a shout out to Brittany Murphy. She was great.
Yes.
And so many things.
Always love Brittany Murphy.
Yeah. But yeah, and it's a great cast. You mentioned some of the cast, really good cast. Lots of them went on to do lots of other different things.
Yeah.
It's good TV shows and film actors and things like that. But yeah, good rundown.
All right, great. Who's kicking off tonight? I don't even have any idea. Who do you want to kick off tonight, Phil?
You get the rundown, so shall I go first?
Sure, why not?
Yeah. Okay. So time moves on, and Cher and her friends go off to college. None of them end up at the same ones, but all promise to keep in touch. Some do, some fall away over time, as often happens. Josh and Cher visit each other as often as they can, but the relationship stalls, falters, and then breaks apart. It's nobody's fault. It's just distance, age, and things like that. They end up not seeing each other for the next few years. Josh dives into his journalism course and ends up working as a reporter at a small cable news channel. He considers growing a moustache, but thinks better of it. Ty ends up becoming a fashion designer and ends up dressing various Hollywood stars. Dion, is it?
I think it's Dion, but it's been a while.
Dion finds a passion for politics, and many years later, she ends up as president of America.
Nice.
As for Cher, she ended up moving into psychotherapy and has a very successful practice. One day, she's approached by a TV show to discuss mental health. On her arrival at the studios, she finds Josh will be interviewing her. It's been a good while since they last spoke. They reconnect, start seeing each other again, and they end up marrying, have 4 kids. Their careers are hugely successful, and they have a long, happy life together.
All right.
And that's my after the ending.
Very nicely done. I like that. Very good. I'm a sucker for a good happy ending.
Yeah.
Now, this is the part of the show where I feel the obligation to point out to people that Phil and I do not compare our after the endings before we record. We like to surprise each other. And on occasion, they end up being a little bit similar.
Ooh, okay.
And so just for the record, I want to get that out there. Maybe it's something about the film itself, right? Maybe it just sort of lends itself to taking things in a particular direction. But
could be.
I'm going to go on record, actually, Phil, because I feel like I should get ahead of this and say that this might be the most similar endings we've ever done.
Okay.
in the history of the show. So those of you who are like, sweet, I can't wait to see the crazy different directions these two go in tonight. We're going to.
They're always so different.
Yeah, they are usually pretty different, but not so much tonight, but that's all right. I mean, some differences, but
Okay.
So all right,
Hit me.
well, here we go. While Cher originally had no plans to go to college, Josh gets accepted to USC, and Cher decides she wants to be near him, so she applies to the nearby California Fashion Institute, which I believe is made up, but who knows? There might really be one. She figures since she's got such an eye for fashion, being a clothing designer would be a great career for her. And things go well for them for the first year or so, but eventually college life gets in the way, and Cher and Josh drift apart and break up. Cher continues working towards her degree, however, as she's become passionate about fashion design, and Josh continues on in school, eventually deciding to go to law school and become a civil rights lawyer. Cher graduates and gets a low-level job at Tommy Hilfiger, but not surprisingly, she quickly starts to move up the ranks and becomes more and more powerful in the fashion industry. Josh eventually does become a civil rights lawyer and goes to work in a prestigious firm in New York. Cher eventually starts her own clothing line, Cherful, and while both of them are fulfilled in their careers, and both of them date and have relationships, neither one of them ever settles down. 10 years later, Cher finds herself in court when she's accused of illegal labor practices overseas where her clothes are manufactured. Now, Cher's always maintained stringent humanitarian standards in all aspects of her company, so she suspects a rival company is trying to take down her clothing empire. When she shows up for the first day of the trial, she realizes the lawyer on the opposite side of the case is Josh. Throughout the trial, Josh begins to figure out that something doesn't add up, and in a dramatic reveal, he uncovers that the new CEO of Mugatu Fashions planted false evidence to take down Cherful, which has eaten into their market share. After the case is dismissed, Cher invites Josh out to a celebratory dinner. They reconnect and realize that now that they're both located in New York City, that neither one of them ever got over the other one. Quicker than you can say, as if, they become a couple again and begin a romance that will last the rest of their lives. And that's my ending. So,
very good. Yeah, well, it was different enough, but yeah,
I mean, different paths, but they both they broke up in college. They went apart. They came back together through their jobs and ended up together. Like just
crazy,
fairly similar
reference as well.
Well, thank you. I thought a little. I was trying to think of like what's a good well-known fashion thing. I was like, we got to go Zoolander, with Will Ferrell's Mugatu is pretty good. So. But I also want to make sure we knew that Cher is still a good person. She's not using unhumanitarian labor in other countries, because I don't think that's true to her character.
Yeah. No, excellent. Good stuff.
All right, nicely done. So there you go. Those are our endings for Clueless. As always, don't be afraid to let us know what you think happens after the ending of Clueless. We're always, maybe you can up something more creative or different than what Phil and I came up with tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think of maybe going, because it's been a while since I've gone like a dark ending for one of the films, and I was thinking maybe this could be the one, but it just didn't seem right. It just didn't seem right with the characters.
Right, I get you. And I was thinking about somebody who might get hit with a bus, but there was nobody in it that I found annoying enough to hit with a bus, which is also kind of an old school throwback. But I was really working hard to fit in that Murray went on to become a surgeon, just because, he's played by Donald Faison, who of course was in Scrubs. But I didn't have room for him, and I focused on Cher and Josh and didn't have room to squeeze that in. So, all right.
That was fun.
Indeed it is. Okay, so that's going to bring us to our top 5 for the night, which again is our top 5 non-Marvel Paul Rudd movies.
Yes.
And Phil, did you have any? I know sometimes we talk about like kind of our criteria, or if we had any rules or anything like that. Did you have anything specific tonight?
The main thing I was going for, I was thinking it was mainly more, I was going, well, which roles did I really like him in? Because maybe couple of the films maybe weren't like the best films that he's been in, but I really liked what he did with them and his particular turn in each one. What about you?
Okay. Yeah, I think I focus more on the movies than the roles per se. So we might have some slightly different lists. I kind of tried to pick which not that, because it's not that I don't think Paul Rudd's a good actor, but he's in the comedic acting, I wasn't thinking like, oh, this is a really amazing performance. So I was thinking a little bit more about, which movies do I enjoy the most. The only kind of rule I put in is he's done so many like cameos and minor roles and things like that. I didn't want to focus solely on things he has the lead role in, but I really tried to focus on things he either has a lead role or is part of an ensemble, rather than like, oh, he shows up for 5 minutes and then he disappears, or things like that. I try to pick movies where he has a sizable role. That was really my only criteria.
Yeah, cool.
All right, well, I guess I'll start then, because you kicked off with the endings, right? That sounds fair.
Yeah, works for me. Yeah.
All right, cool. So then my number 5 is from 2012, and it is Wanderlust, starring Jennifer Aniston and Paul Rudd, obviously. Co-starring Jennifer Aniston is what I meant to say. And this is, I think, one of his maybe lesser successful comedies. It's about he gets laid off, and so they sort of, like a city couple, and they try to explore like alternative living options. They end up at like a commune, like a free love commune, kind of out in the country with a bunch of like wacky characters, which on paper sounds kind of terrible. And it's actually a really funny movie. It is definitely not something you want to watch with the kids, but it's really, really funny. He's great. Jennifer Aniston is great. It's just there's so many. It's one of those films where every time you turn around, there's another person you recognize showing up for a small role here, and things like that. And just the humor is very off color, but it's it'll make you laugh the whole way through, for sure. And I find it like kind of a Paul Rudd sleeper hit. Excuse me, if you will. So that's my number 5, is 2012's Wanderlust. Definitely worth seeing if you have not ever seen it. Track it down.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it. When I was going through the list, that was one where I remember wanting to see it, or it had been streaming or something. I meant to watch it, but just never got around to it. I also noticed there's quite a few on the list, which where I was sort of getting confused between which film it was, because there's a few which I think they're not the similar plot, but they're also set around about the same time period. Just ordinary people doing ordinary things, that kind of stuff. But no, good choice. But my number 5 is from 2018, and it's Mute by Duncan Jones, sci-fi film, kind of set in the same universe as Moon, and it does have, you do see some elements of that briefly. But Paul Rudd plays a character called Cactus Bill, and he knocks around with a character called Duck, played by Justin Theroux, and it's a bit different because it's more like a villainous character. He's a bit of a bad guy. He's a bit of a criminal. He's not the worst of the worst in the film with regards the crimes they do, but it was a change of pace, and I think it works well because you see, Paul Rudd when he first turns up, and he's doing a bit of the charm and stuff he normally does. So you're going, oh, okay, yes, well, it's not going to be this bad. I've heard he's the bad guy, but what? And then he does stuff which you're going, oh yeah, oh, that's a bit of a turn, and it's a nice change in your expectations, and as it goes on, you find more about his past, and it's a few twists and turns. But I always like what he did with it. The film itself, I think there was more potential there than it actually managed to. It didn't quite work fully, but I enjoyed Paul Rudd in it. I enjoyed everybody's performance in it, and it was interesting to see more of the universe that Duncan Jones had set up. But I really like seeing Paul Rudd going against type than he normally does. But that was my number 5. And
all right. So you may remember we mentioned some of those technical difficulties earlier. I'm not sure whose end they're on. There we go. Hi, Phil.
Yeah, you froze briefly, but then you came back. So I just finished my number 5.
All right, good. Okay. I heard all of it except for the very end part there. So, but that's interesting. I have not seen Mute. I wanted to. It's on my list. It's one of those things that I've been like, oh, I got to get around to watching that, and I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So that's a great choice. All right, good. Okay, so then my number 4 is from 2009, and it is I Love You, Man, starring Paul Rudd, of course, and Jason Segel. And this is kind of in that Paul Rudd sort of comedy heyday. He had a couple of good years there with some big comedies. I have a lot of comedy, I think, on this list, but I really, really enjoy this movie. A, it's just plain funny. But B, like, I think you know, it really does kind of get at an issue that is an actual issue in a funny way, which is adult males making friends. Is really
Yeah,
a hard thing to
yeah.
do for a lot of us, and this movie I think kind of looks at it from a really interesting way. And it I think any guy of a certain age watching that movie can really relate to the characters in it. But at the end of the day, it's also just a very funny comedy, you know. And it's a really good double feature with another film which may or may not appear further on my list. So that came out around the same time. So you may be able to extrapolate what that is. But I Love You Man, co-starring Jason Segel. Very funny stuff. Highly worth watching if you haven't seen it.
No, I enjoyed that one. Yeah, but is that the one? Is it Slapping the Bass? That one where
Yeah,
they're
that's the
playing
one
the
with
yeah,
slapping
yeah,
the
yeah.
bass. Right,
Slapping the
exactly.
Bass, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the one.
I
Yeah.
enjoyed it, but it's been a long time since I've seen it. But again, it was one of those. There's a few films where he did where it's all on the same time, and they in my head, a lot of them got mixed up. So that's why
Yeah,
some of them didn't make the list. If I rewatched them again recently, they probably might have made the list. But good choice
totally.
though.
Great.
Okay, so my number 4 is a film which is just really stupid, but I really enjoy it, and it's an ensemble piece. It's Wet Hot American Summer from
Mm,
2001, which is an American teen comedy, which is set at an American summer camp, which is something I always like seeing in films because we didn't really have anything close to that really in the UK. I know there are various bits and pieces, but I always like that whole camp, the camps you see in all the horror movies and the comedies and things like that. But this one is a play on that with such a really good cast of different comedy people, serious actors as well doing things. But I just like Paul Rudd as a character called Andy, who's just this. All the girls love him, but he just doesn't give a damn. He's ignorant, stupid, lazy, and I just like it's just so over the. Everybody's so over the top, but it's just ridiculous. And I remember watching it for the first time and just howling at so many different scenes. But there's so many people involved. They all have their moment to shine, but I just like Paul whenever he turned up and he just always go, doing all this kind of stuff. And yeah,
right.
that's Wet Hot American Summer.
All right. That is a true cult classic. It does have a lot of fans. I will say this, Phil. I know I'm not in the majority on this one. I actively hate that movie.
Oh, I can see why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see why people would hate it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's one of those ones. Just you either love it or you hate it.
yeah, and I think part of the problem is I didn't see it for a long time. I think I only watched it for the first time a few years ago. And you know, I think it had been sort of built up, and there's so many good people in it, you know, that I was like, it has to be good. And then I watched it, and I hated every minute of it, like vehemently hated it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just, and I can get into a stupid comedy. I don't know what it is about it that triggered me so much, but I don't know if it's just that the characters are so over the top, ridiculous, and stupid, or what. But I
oh
just,
yeah.
yeah,
There's so
that's
many of them
why.
are just stupid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't get into that one. So I mean, I'm glad you made it on your list for the sake of having different stuff on our list, but I can't get behind that one personally. So I mean,
No,
look, everyone to each their own. I hope people do enjoy watching it, but I'm just not
no,
one of
I
them.
can totally understand. I can imagine if I'd seen it a few years later, or if I was in a different mood or something, different place in my life,
Yeah.
I could see it not hitting quite right. But at the time, yeah, I watched it. It was
Yeah.
good stuff, man.
I'm sure had I seen that movie when I was like, well, I don't think the math works out, but if it had come out when I was like 21, I probably would have thought it was the funniest thing ever, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's just not at this point in my life. I can't, I can't. All right. Well, there you go. So that's on the list. Okay.
Yeah.
My number 3 non-Marvel Paul Rudd movie is the most recent one on my list. It's from 2021, and it is Ghostbusters Afterlife,
Oh yeah,
which
yeah,
I just absolutely adored. I loved it. I think my number 2 or 3 film of 2021. It was in my top 5.
yeah, yeah,
I thought it was an amazing film that really kept true to the spirit of Ghostbusters, brought in new characters that I really enjoyed, brought in old characters in a great way. I just thought it's such a great. I don't feel like the film made a big enough impact, to be honest. Like it's sort of like
yeah,
it came
yeah,
out, it did decent at the box office, but not fantastic. It kind of already seems like people have kind of forgotten it a little bit, even though I think there's a new one coming out soon. And honestly, my only hesitation for putting it on the list, and the only reason I didn't maybe put it a little higher, well, some of the other movies are also good, but is that even though he's one of the main characters, his role is kind of surprisingly small in the film.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah.
And not small enough that it doesn't include, isn't worthy of inclusion on the list, because he is a main character. But the kids in the film get a lot more screen time than he does. But that said, I still really enjoyed what he brought to the character. I thought his style and his portrayal of the character really fit the vibe of a Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah.
I don't know that it would have worked as well with an adult character being played by someone who was less likable, because that's what the Ghostbusters were always, quirky but likable, and I think he kind of fits into that role. So yeah, is it a Paul Rudd movie? Not really. He's in it, obviously, but it's not like people think of that as a Paul Rudd vehicle. It's a Ghostbusters movie. But to be in. But I love it. I love it a lot.
I did like he was played the teacher, didn't he? He was one of those teachers who you wish you'd had when you're in school. I was like that. But as you say, he goes in it. He does a bit of exposition, and he's not in it for a while, and he pops up again, does some other bits and pieces. But whenever he is in it, like in most of his films, he's really good. But yeah, good pick. Didn't make my list. I was thinking about it, but just didn't quite fit. But yeah, it's funny. It does feel like that film's almost being forgotten. It's
unfortunate.
It did reasonably okay at the box office, and then disappeared. Okay, my number 3 is one which it might have been in my top 10 of that year, but it's from 2013, and it's a small comedy drama which is written and directed by David Gordon Green, and it's Prince Avalanche.
I knew this would be on your list.
Two-man film, with Paul Rudd and Emil Hirsch. It's based on an Icelandic film as well, but it's Paul Rudd and Emil Hirsch play Alvin and Lance, and they're basically repainting traffic lines down a road after there's been a big forest fire, wildfire, as unfortunately seems to happen quite a lot in certain areas of the States. And as they're doing this, they're going along, they're talking about life, meeting a few people. It's one of those films where not very much happens, but it's a nice easygoing thing. You learn bits about these two ordinary people, also the way they're dressed and where they wear. I like my headcanon, it's kind of like a serious take on Mario Brothers. But I do like Paul Rudd is just, he acts, it's because they're the two main characters and on the screen most of the time, especially, Paul Rudd is all the time, I think, because Emil Hirsch's character leaves partway through and then comes back. It's just like it's a chance for Paul Rudd to just act and really shine. And it's got some funny moments, it's got dramatic moments, it's got lots of moments where there's no talking, and it's physical or just little looks here and there, but it's a great example just to see how well Paul Rudd can act when in a more serious or semi-serious role anyway. But that's my number 3, Prince Avalanche.
Okay, I like that. There's another one's on my list that I keep meaning to get to, and I haven't actually gotten to yet. So it's not on my list, but I swear, I feel like it might have been your number 1 for that year. I might be wrong.
Yeah, I can't remember. I've not got my book around.
That's all right. I'm not.
Yeah. I think it might have been in the top 5. Yeah, I think it was in the top 5.
It definitely was in the top 5. I feel like there's even a chance that maybe it was number 1, and maybe I might be wrong on that. But
you might be thinking of another Paul Rudd film, which might show up on my list a bit later.
Oh yeah. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. Okay, all right, never mind. I won't say anything then. There was a movie. I'm just looking. That's why I was looking at my phone right now. I feel like I'm forgetting a movie that I actually really liked, and that's what it is. No, I missed that one when I was going through it. Yeah, it's been a while.
He has been in a lot of films. That's what I noticed when we did the list.
I'm going to throw in a random movie that's not on my list. What's that?
Okay, go on.
Just quickly,
we got microphone delays. Yes.
Yeah.
I was just saying he's been in an awful lot of films. It's when I was looking to do the list, going through, it's surprising how many he's been. And as you said, there's been lots of cameos and things like that. But I was just not quite shocked, but just went, oh wow, yeah, he's been a working actor for a long, long time.
Yep. So the one I'll just quickly throw. Well, maybe do you have any honorable mentions? Do you have any?
I've not, but if you want to mention this one, you've just remembered now.
Okay. So I forgot, and I don't think it would have necessarily made my list, to be honest with you. But I just was thinking about it. It was like there was a movie of his that I really enjoyed that came out a while back, but I haven't seen it since it came out, so it probably would have made my list. And it's
Okay.
Over Her Dead Body, with him and Eva Longoria, and Eva Longoria plays his ex-girlfriend who's died, and she's a ghost, and she tries to break up his current relationship.
Oh yeah.
And I just remember really liking it and thinking it was highly underrated because it kind of tanked the box office, and thinking it was a lot of fun. Again, I haven't seen it probably since it came out in 2006, so I don't think I would have made my list, but I missed it completely when I was going over the choices. So I'll just throw that in as a random, could have been a number 6 as Over Her Dead Body. So anyway,
I remember that, and I remember that, and I remember seeing it, but I can't remember much about it.
Yeah,
Wow.
I remember it being surprisingly funny, is what it was.
Okay.
So now I want to rewatch it, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
We'll
but
see if
if
it finds anywhere.
it's streaming anywhere, I think I'll give that a
Yeah,
rewatch.
right. All right, so I'm going to move into somewhat obvious territory here now. I think your choices are probably leaning a different direction than mine because you went more for performances and I went more for movies, which is good. It gives us a wide range of films.
A mix of a list, yeah.
Yeah. So this is probably the most supporting role of the list. I think everything else he was really a main role in, but it is a true comedy classic. 2004's Anchorman is my number 2.
Is this your number 2?
Yeah. Is it your number 2?
It's my number 2 as well. Yeah,
All
that's a
right,
bingo.
nice. Okay, good. Yeah. So I mean, look, I probably told the story on the show before. I'll tell it again because we have new listeners all the time. I hated Anchorman when it first came out. I hated is a strong word. I didn't really like it that much. I just thought it was okay. I didn't think it was that funny. Because I saw it in theaters like opening night, and I was like, whatever. And felt that way for many years. And it got more and more popular over the years. And I was like, really, Anchorman? And then one day, and this has got to be now, I don't even know, 10, 12 years ago, I guess, I was really sick. I had a stomach bug, and I was laid up in bed. And I turned on the TV, and I was so sick I couldn't even change the channel.
Wow.
So I got it onto a channel that had like a Star Trek movie marathon on. They played like 3 Star Trek movies in a row, and I was just laying in bed, just miserable. And then after the Star Trek movies ended, Anchorman came on. And I was, like I said, I was so miserable. I was like, I can't even be bothered to change the channel. Like, I'm just gonna watch Anchorman. And I don't know what changed in that time, but it was so funny to me that even in my misery, even though I was miserable, I was laughing out loud. I was like deliriously laughing at it. So I completely changed my opinion on Anchorman, and now I do love it. I think it's a great film, and I get why it's such a cult classic, and why it's so popular. I don't know what changed. I don't know why I didn't like it the first time as much, why I do like it so much now. But that was definitely, I'll never forget that moment where my opinion on Anchorman completely changed because I was just lying in bed, like trapped and going, this movie is really funny. This is the best thing for me right now. Yeah, it's great. And he's got the whole, 60% of the time, this works every time, 100% of the time, whatever. It's, so again, a supporting role, but just such a fun movie, and he's great in it. And so Anchorman, that's my thoughts. Phil, what about you?
Yeah, it's interesting though. It's not often there's a film that you hate and then you end up loving. It's usually the other way around, isn't it? You film you used to love, and then you see it again, you go, oh no, this is dreadful. But no, Anchorman, I've always enjoyed it. Again, it's similar because it's stupid people doing stupid things, and ridiculous, surreal moments which don't make any sense, but it all works thematically with the film. But I love Paul Rudd's name as well, Brian Fantana. Just something about that. But all the characters, especially the core 4 of the news team, are just brilliant. But Paul Rudd, he's just got that ultra confidence, but you just know he's always striking out with women. He thinks he's all that. He thinks he's super cool, and he kind of is though. Out of the 4 of them, he's probably the coolest.
True story.
But it's just, I just love his attitude, his voice, and just that stuff. But and the whole Sex Panther thing is just brilliant. So many good lines in it, but it's a definite ensemble piece. And when they're all together, and it's just wonderful. It's like lightning in a bottle because Anchorman 2 was not very good. And Paul Rudd, I just love him in that. Brian Fantana, it's brilliant. Great name. That's our number 2.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. So I know for a fact that our number 1s will be different because, hints and things like that. But my number 1 is one of my favorite comedies, and it's such a quotable movie. And unfortunately, I can't quote a single thing on this show because this is a family show that we keep it pretty PG-13, and there's nothing PG-13 about this movie. It is 2008's Role Models, starring Paul Rudd and Seann William Scott, which is just one of the funniest movies ever. When you're in the mood for something like really R-rated, like it's, like I said, so many quotes I can think of and none of them I can repeat. But it's just great. It's he plays a guy who's just like down in the dumps. His girlfriend breaks up with him, and Sean William Scott, his best friend, is just like playing himself, and he's like a Monster Energy drink type of guy, salesman, and things just get worse until they start becoming big brothers to these two kids, who are both very unique personalities, we'll say. And man, it's a great ensemble cast, but it's just so funny. It makes me laugh out loud every time I watch it. It's vulgar, but in a smart way. It's one of those comedies that could easily be a dumb comedy, but it's not. So many just.
It's got a lot of heart as well.
The one I always think of. The one, what's that?
It's got a lot of heart as well, though.
Yeah, exactly. It does have a lot of heart, But then I also think of, I used to have for breakfast, cocaine. I used to have for lunch, cocaine. What did you have for dinner? Was it cocaine? Things like that. Like I'm sure a lot of us improv, but the script is really funny. And so I love that movie. I think it's great.
Well, that's interesting because there's a GQ. They often do videos where it's talking to actors on YouTube, where talking about their iconic roles and things like that. And it's Paul Rudd, because of Ant-Man. He's got one from a few days ago, and it's really good because he's talking about the various scenes in lots of the movies he did, and he's explaining that many of them were improvised, but he goes through the whole setup of them. There's one in Knocked Up where they're in a hotel room, and there's just different chairs, and he keeps going into different ones, and that changes it. And I think they've done mushrooms in it as well, and they're doing this. But he said the only reason he did that with the chairs is because when they turned up on the set, the prop people had put these chairs all around the room, so they just decided, let's all move them all up, and that's how it all went. But it's a really interesting video because he talks about lots of different films. But
I'll have to check that out.
But the Role Models is a great film. It didn't make my list. I was thinking about it, but it's one of those other ones I've not watched in a long time, and I need to watch it again because I do remember. Well, I remember lots of times going, "What? Oh, what? Gee, oh, did they just say that?" But
yeah.
But it's there's the few quotes that I can remember. I just can't say them at all.
Right? Exactly.
But I'm glad it made your list. I thought it might be. I knew it'd be in the list somewhere. But
it's one of my favorites. I really
my number one then is one from 2016. It might have been my number one of the year. I can't remember, but it's the Fundamentals of Caring.
That's the one I think I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Paul Rudd, Craig Roberts, Selena Gomez, Jennifer L, and a few others. And it's Paul Rudd plays a character called Ben Benjamin, who's a writer, but he's not got much work, and he gets trained to be a caregiver, and he starts looking after Craig Roberts' character, who's got muscular dystrophy, and he realizes, Paul Rudd's character realizes that Craig Roberts is frustrated in many different ways. So they go on a road trip and end up picking up Selena Gomez, who's hitchhiking. They go to various different places in America. It's very funny. It's very dramatic, deals with some serious issues, but it's one of those roles again where Paul Rudd he can turn on the charm, bring on the comedy, but his character he's playing in this case is that there's some tragedy in his past. And you're picking up on that, but he's still doing great things with it. There are laugh out loud moments in it as well, but then there's other bits where you're almost in tears. It's a great balancing act from all involved. Great performances. It's worth checking out if you haven't seen it. But that's my number one. It really touched me when I watched it. But I think it's one of Paul Rudd's finest moments on screen, and that's my number one.
Yeah, I had a feeling that and Prince Avalanche would be on your list, although I may have confused the two. I might have put them together as the one movie in my mind. But I know one of them was your number one for the year. I don't remember which.
Yeah, I can't remember which. I'm going to have to go back and check, I think, at some point.
But again, I have to say, bad job by me. It's another one I keep meaning to watch and have not gotten around to yet. So part of the reason it's not on my list, main reason it's not on my list is because I haven't seen it yet. So I need to get on that. But good choice for number one. Good choice. All right. So good list. Only one overlap. That makes sense. It was Anchorman, which I think is pretty understandable. But there we go. So those are our top 5 non-Marvel Paul Rudd movies. I'm sure Ant-Man or Ant-Man and the Wasp or Captain America Civil War would have made it on there, or any of the Avengers, Endgame or Infinity War. Could have just done all 5 of those and that would have been my list. But that seemed kind of boring. So so we left the Marvel stuff off. We'll do Marvel lists at some point. We got to talk about there.
I do like how Ant-Man is like one of the most pivotal one of the most pivotal characters in the MCU
Yes,
because all the
yes,
thing. And I get the impression it's going to be the same with Quantum Mania. I
right.
think we're going to see a big shift as well. But it's and he's really good in the role, and I can't wait to see it on Saturday. A couple of
Yes,
days
I'm
from
going
now.
tomorrow, actually. So at least for the
Oh,
time.
look at you!
So I will be sure to send you a bunch of spoilers. I'll text you a bunch of spoilers.
Oh,
Okay.
great! That's what I love.
Yeah, I know. I know you do. All right, so there you go. That's our top 5 list for this episode, and that's going to bring us to our final section, which is ATE recommends. What are Phil and I enjoying right now? So, Phil, do you want to start us off?
Yes, I've just got one thing, and it is a book.
Okay, let's see it.
Here we go. This is The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin, who will you might recognize as the music producer. He's done lots of various different things. He interviewed, he recently, was it last year, the year before, he did an interview series where he's speaking to Paul McCartney. He's done lots of wonderful things. But this book, it's basically a bunch of essays, and some of them are just like 1 or 2 pages, but he's talking all about creativity, where it comes from, how to keep it going, various. It's just great. It's one of those ones you can dip into, just read 1 or 2 chapters. It will inspire you. It'll make you go,
Right,
think of it that way. That
Yeah.
kind of thing. But every single bit, it's kind of like it's one of those books where it could also be called A Way of Being and Zen. You know, you chuck Zen somewhere into the title as well.
Right.
But it's just very nice. I like the whole. It's very tactile. It's a lovely thing like this. But it goes into like self-doubt, setting. These are just some of the titles. Submerge, look for clues, the ecstatic, and it's got lots of lovely quotes and things, lots of some great ideas as well. If you do have writer's block or block in creativity, he talks about things that you might not have thought are being creative, like cooking and stuff like that, and you're suddenly going, oh yeah, the things you can do. It really is inspiring, and I've enjoyed dipping in and out of it, and it's I think it's one of those ones I'll probably read over and over again over the years, but it's definitely worth picking up if you're in any way involved in creativity, or even it will inspire you. So that's the Creative Act by Rick Rubin.
I like it. I have a lot of respect for Rick Rubin as a producer. He's one of the greats, I think. So I'm definitely interested to check that out. I like stuff like that. So I hadn't even heard of it. So I appreciate you opening my eyes up to that.
No problem at all. Yeah, it's good. Check it out.
All right. Well, my recommendation, I'm a little late to the party on. I'm going to admit this. So some of you are going to be like, yeah, they're like, great. Thanks for that recommendation. I already watched this like 6 months ago.
There's no time limit on coming into something.
Right. Well, as we know, I've talked about how last year was my year of 365 movies in 365 days. Because I was on a fast track for that, I never had time to watch many TV shows. So I fell behind on everything. So I've been catching up on TV shows this year as I've slowed down on my movies. So my recommendation today is the Amazon Prime series Reacher. Based on the Lee Child books, and starring what's his name, who I love, Alan Richardson. And I blew through this. I assume you've watched it based on your.
Oh, it's great! I loved it. Yeah.
Oh my god, it's fantastic! It is so good. I watched one episode because I had to review it. I got the Blu-rays to review for the column that I write for Live for Films, and I was like, okay, now I got to watch this, So I put on the first episode, and then I couldn't stop. I was like, this show is fantastic. It's like here, like I always talk about how like 90s action movies are like my favorite genre, and this is not entirely like a 90s action movie, but a lot of times I'm looking for movies to watch late at night. I'm always like in the mood for like a good action movie that's kind of slick and kind of like sharp and smart, and I have a hard time finding ones I haven't seen at this point. And then I put Reacher on. I'm like, this is exactly what I want, like all the time. I like this. It's like, it's got like a great story. It's well written. It's got good characters. It's got a good cast. It's got a good amount of action, but it's not just pure action, right? It's like a mystery. But then when things get actiony, it's like, oh boy, watch out. This dude is huge and he's jacked. And like, really, I haven't read the books yet, although I'm going to start because now I'm obsessed. Of course, this is how I operate. We all know this. But I do remember like when the Tom Cruise movies came out, which I do like them, that the fans of the books were complaining because Reacher's character is this big, huge, hulking dude, and Tom Cruise obviously is not that. But Alan Richardson, holy cow, he really is. And it's not, the character is not a very verbose character, which is kind of the fun of it. It's like the characters around him do all the talking, and he sort of just shows up and says a few things very, and you listen, and then he beats up some people and stuff. But like, I just loved it. I blew right through it. I couldn't wait to finish it, but then I was sad when I finished it. That's always the mark of a good show,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So if anybody else out there hasn't, if you've already watched it, great. You hopefully you're excited that I'm excited about it now. If you haven't watched it, it's on Amazon Prime. It's also out now on home video, like DVD and Blu-ray. Highly recommend it. It is Reacher. It's based on the Lee Child novels, and it's fantastic. Highly recommend.
Alan Ritchson does such a good job, as you say. Those moments of stillness when he's just sat there.
Yes,
it's just good. And I think because in the books it was always his size is part of the character, and I think it really shows well when he is just sitting there.
Yeah,
quiet, just because he's so intelligent as well, and he's just listening and taking things in. But you just know he can explode and just destroy everyone in the room if need be.
Yeah, and I think it would have been easy to fall into the trap of him being like this completely emotionless character that you kind of can't get invested in. But as you go through the series, and there's stuff that deals with his brother, and there's stuff that deals with a female character that may or may not get romantic and stuff. And it's like, okay, he does have emotions, and he is a real person. He is very stoic, and he doesn't reveal them easily. But sometimes you get tired of these characters who are just a blank slate and have nothing behind it. But he's not like that. He's guarded for sure, but you can get invested in him as a character. So I loved it. Cannot wait for season 2.
Me too.
And that's it. Reacher. So there we go.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And you mentioned last year you did your 365 films over a year. I think I mentioned in the last episode that I was aiming to do the same. As of, let's get the correct date. What date are we on? Because it's almost midnight here. But we're currently on the 16th of February, 2023. And so far, as of today, I've watched 60 films. That's 60 films.
And so that's I'm ahead of schedule. It's about 44 days, 46 days in. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's it seems easy in February. That's all I'm gonna say.
I can imagine it'll be
see how you're feeling around October, and let me know if you're still gonna try and get all the way through.
But I've been enjoying it because I've been watching films I might not have normally watched, and if I've had time, if I'm watching on streaming, when a film finishes and I've got time to watch something else or at least get one started, I'll often just see one which comes up in, as you watch this, we recommend this, and I've gone, oh, what's that one? And done that. So it's introduced me to lots of films, and I've also gone back and watched some other films from the past I've liked, because every now and again I'll go, I think Amazon Prime does it, films under 90 minutes. And I'm going, oh, I've not got time to watch anything longer, but I'll put that on, and it's sort of going, well, what is that? Oh, I'll go with that, and just boom.
And that's the secret to it, honestly, is to pulling it off, I should say, is you can't go into the mindset of just like one movie per day, because things are going to happen, and you're going to have days where you're not going to get to a movie. Or like for me, football season happened, right? Where Sundays, like, forget it. I'm watching football all day. But like just something comes up, or you're busy, or you're going out and you don't have time. So it's exactly that. I would do, not my favorite way to watch movies, but I would do a lot of them in pieces where I would sit down to watch one full movie, right? And then I'd be like, okay, well, it's 11 o'clock. I'm probably good for another half hour, an hour before I fall asleep. So I'll start another movie, right? And I'll get halfway through it. I'll finish that tomorrow night. I would finish that and then start a movie, and then I'd finish that whole thing. And then bam, you've gotten 3 movies in 2 days. So you can build up a little bit of a buffer, because you are going to have some times where you can't get to it. So, but it's a fun experiment, but it gets grueling by the end. And I'm not going to repeat it. I'll tell you that.
But I do find it works well. Like, watch a film I've not seen before, then watching an old favorite and like that. And just
I did a big mix too of movies I'd never seen before, and then revisiting old favorites for sure. That's a good way to do it. So I've been tracking your progress on social, so I'm enjoying seeing what you're watching. So keep it up. I'm glad to hear about it. We'll keep checking in with you here on the show as well.
Yeah, but it's good stuff. If anybody else is doing the 365 films in a year, let us know what films you're currently up to, how many you've watched, and things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
What are your secrets to watching lots of films in a productive manner? I hope it doesn't meaning I hate films by the end of it, but I'm enjoying it. Really enjoying it at the moment, though. It's also helping. I think it's slowed down the year so far, because it's sort of
right.
It's not just the weeks getting away. I'm going, oh well, yes. It's breaking up each day and making each day its own thing, which sometimes they all blend into one. But this is really helping keep it all separate, which is
Yeah,
nice.
I mean, I definitely don't hate films. It didn't make me hate films. It just gets to that point where you sort of become obsessive about it. Then you're like, I would sit down and be like, oh, I'm going to read some comics. I'm like, oh, but I should be watching a movie right now. And then you
Yeah.
sort of
Oh,
get
I
a
could
little
see
bit,
that coming. Yeah, yeah.
and I think I mentioned in the last episode, like I've really slowed down this year, partly because I'm trying to catch up on TV shows. But I think I'm at like 23 films for the year so far, which, and we're mid-February. That's not even, it's like, I don't know, one every other day or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And that actually took me a while. I think at the end of January, I was only like 13. And then February, I kind of kicked it up a little bit because I've just been having some stuff to watch. But so like, I don't think I get to the point where you're going to be like, oh, I don't want to watch another film as long as I live. But like I said, it just sort of becomes a little obsessive by the end. So, just that's all. But it's fun. I enjoyed it. It was a good experiment.
Good stuff. But it is good. I'm enjoying it so far.
Good.
Excellent.
All right. Well, there you go. So that's going to start to wrap us up then. We talked about Paul Rudd. Hopefully you like Paul Rudd. If not, this episode is probably a bummer for you. And sorry for the delay. For those of you who are waiting anxiously for this episode, we just had some life stuff get in the way. And here we are now, though. So we'll hopefully be back on a regular schedule after this, as regular as it gets for us anyway. You know how it goes.
Yeah, just keep checking back the Facebook page, social media, things like that. We'll try and give updates as and when we can.
And if you're subscribed, it'll just new episodes will pop up in your inbox, when they come out. So, all righty, well, that's going to do it for us. So, hope you guys enjoyed this, and we, as always, we thank you for listening and or watching. But until next time, I'm Mike Spring,
and I'm Phil Edwards,
and we'll catch you in the next episode
of After the Ending.